Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. As always, I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Fin to give back to the communities that we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Fin platform. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, y'all. We are back once again for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship podcast. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you probably noticed something a little different today. My first in-person episode of the Bear Necessities. We're coming to you live from New York City at the Starta Ventures office with my amazing guest today, a buddy of mine, Jay Caleb. So Jay Caleb is an entrepreneur, an author, and a community organizer. He's passionate about building community, diversity, inclusion, and sharing stories. Jay Caleb, say hello to Bear Nation for me.
Guys, it's such a pleasure to be on. Rob, thank you so much for having me. It's always a great time.
Yeah, you bet. I'm super excited to be chatting with you here and really looking at what it is that what does entrepreneurship mean? So, first question I have for you. Why did you want to become an entrepreneur? What led you? We'll talk about your story.
Yeah.
But what led you to want to become an entrepreneur?
I think when we look at like our family legacy and our family dynamic, I feel like I didn't mean to get deep on the first point, but it just hit me.
That's what this is all about. That's what this is about. Okay.
It just hit me. I think it was a speaker, Christine Kane. She's like a motivational speaker, Christian author. And she said, if you look at your family tree, we always think we're trailblazing a new work, which we very well could be. But she said, if we look like at our family tree and our family history, 9 times out of 10, we're carrying on a legacy that already started in our family. Mm-hmm. So that makes me think about my grandfather. He was an entrepreneur. He owned a hotel in Detroit, in the 60s, and he was doing his thing. He was also a barber and a pastor. So he had like multiple hustles, and not that, one was, his calling was really a pastor. He loved people. He loved connecting with people, but I don't know. I think it's kind of in my blood. It's a long way to say that. It's kind of in my blood.
Yeah. So you talk about legacy. That was the first thing that came to mind. What does legacy mean to you?
Yeah. Legacy, I would say that legacy is leaving a mark for the next generation. Leaving a mark for the next generation and having something that outlives you. Mm-hmm. I think our work isn't important until it has the ability to outlive us once we're gone.
I love that. Leaving a legacy and being remembered, but by who? I guess for you, what do you remember? What do you want to be remembered for?
Wow, that's a great question. It's funny. I feel like more than like business and what I do, I want to be remembered for who I am and how I treat people. Mm-hmm. That saying, like, people will forget what you said, but they'll remember how
you make them feel.
How you make them feel.
Maya Angelou.
Yes. Shout out to Maya Angelou.
So I love this point, the fact that we went here right out the gate, right? Entrepreneurship for you is about carrying a legacy. And for you, your grandfather was an entrepreneur, had a couple hustles in Detroit, and now you're following a calling. So, we talk about you being an entrepreneur. So I'd love to, include the listeners into what you're an entrepreneur and that your journey, right? So for those that don't know, Jay Caleb runs a company called Remedy Networks. And Remedy Networks is really your calling to make an impact. Right? So tell me a little about, because you were originally at Coca-Cola, right? Down in the South, right? Down in Tulsa.
I was.
Okay. So Jay Caleb worked for Coca-Cola for a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, a couple of years.
Okay. And then he did this crazy thing and moved to New York City. So, and that's where your entrepreneurial journey started. So what happened when you were in Tulsa that brought you to New York, and why did you come here to start Remedy Networks?
Yeah, definitely. Also, I just remembered earlier, I said my grandfather had a hotel in the 60s. I'm pretty sure it was way before that. So I just had to clear that up really quick. Just Tulsa. So I got my undergrad degree in Tulsa. And so moving there from Detroit, it was just a big switch, a big change. Mm-hmm. But that was just my first job that I got out of college. Mm-hmm. I honestly didn't like working there. Yeah. It was just like a call center environment. I'm a people person. I love to be around people. So I was just kind of stuck in a cubicle behind a screen, just making phone calls back to back to back. Like the calls wouldn't even stop. They would just keep going after you hang up one another. So it wasn't like the funnest experience or the most fun experience. But it was there when on my lunch break, I just got promoted. I was the youngest person on my team, minority, just got promoted to a higher sales position. Yeah. And I'll never forget, on my lunch break, I read, now mind you, I was in Oklahoma at the time, and I read about a kid, Khalid, who some of you may have known, and so Khalid,
there's a Netflix special on Khalid, right?
Yeah, there is. So if you guys want to check that out too, it's a crazy documentary. It's very informative.
And for those that don't know about Khalid Broder, he was wrongly accused for theft. Went to Rikers, and after he got out of Rikers, did a bunch of media telling a story about the wrongly accused being a black man in New York City, but that led to mental illness. Yeah. Right? So that's Khalid's story. The short version. So that happened.
Yeah, so I read about that story, him being wrongfully convicted of a crime, sent to Rikers, and then him tragically committing suicide. And we get so much bad news, so much bad press, bad media. And so some of it, we're kind of desensitized to it, to where we're just like, oh, that's another bad story. But it was something about this story to where I couldn't just be like, oh, that sucks, and just go back to my job. It hit me in a way where I felt like I was entitled to do something about it, even though I didn't know this kid from Adam, had been to New York maybe once or twice on a bus trip for my 16th birthday, from Michigan, don't know. I couldn't tell you anybody that lived in New York. Yeah. So that's how I transitioned here. I mean, the longer version is that, ended up quitting and then starting a nonprofit to help, advocate for mental health in New York. So that's
so that story was something that you couldn't put down, and you wanted to do something about it. So you quit your job, you moved to New York City, and started a nonprofit. You also wrote a book while you're here. So those that don't know, he wrote a book called Remedy Network: A Millennial's Journey on Connecting New York City Through Stories. Tell me about that book. And was that the first project of Remedy Network and that nonprofit? Or tell me about that story and that process there.
Yeah, so I have to say I didn't intend on writing a book. It sort of just happened. Mm-hmm. I feel like I kept a journal. I've kept a journal for the last maybe 6 years. I have a whole drawer of all of my journals, and I go through them at the end of every year to see how I can grow for the next year. And that was just one of the worst periods in my life. When I left my job and quit and did Remedy, I feel like some of the most points of distinction in our life are always tied to opposition. Mm-hmm. And we are curated, we are programmed to always shy away from opposition. Yeah. But I feel like opposition is almost a calling card to your calling, to what you're supposed to do. That was free. I don't know where that came from. But so it was super, my dad was really sick. He was in the hospital. I was going through depression and all this. So this is what's going on as I moved to New York. But the book came out of just stories after I was reading my journal. I was like, you know what? This might be able to help somebody. Yeah. So it was very cathartic as well. I feel like it was healing writing that book. And I said, hey, if my crazy story could help another entrepreneur or just help someone push through hard times in their life, then let's do it.
Yeah, I think that's really, talking about legacy and impact, right? You read a story, treasure story that you couldn't put down, partly because it was affecting you personally in your own battle with depression. And, the cool thing that y'all should know is that J. Caleb connected with Khalif's brother, and at your book launch party, they did a book launch party. He came and spoke.
Good.
So what was that? I mean, you connected that, that experience. The book was mostly about your experience and your stories and journal, but you tied in the Khalif story to that. What was that like meeting that family, and how did that help you cathartically heal as you went to launch from a book and healing process into the business that now is Remedy Network?
Yo, it was crazy. I felt like I was on the Oprah show or something. It was crazy. When you read Khalif's story and like the newspaper or an article, it's one thing. But then when you meet that family member who was like literally meeting his brother, I can't even lie to you. I got emotional. Mm-hmm. Like I reached out. Oh, you know what? It was through a Remedy Network event. We were doing an event. We had some organizers from the Women's March at the time, Carmen Perez, and some other individuals, FPWA in New York City. And also the mayor's office partnered with us years ago on an event with Thrive Mental Health, which is New York's mental health arm of the city, and they provide free resources to New Yorkers, which I feel like a lot of cities should adopt that model.
Yeah.
But anyway, Carmen messaged me and she was like, I heard you speak about Khalif, on the panel. I know his brother. I should connect you guys. And so I had coffee with him like around Columbus Circle, and I got emotional just when he walked in. I'm like, yo, this is a moment, to be able to talk with him. And he was like, man, it's okay. Cause he could tell I was getting emotional. He's like, it's okay. Like I've had time to process, and it is a tragedy, but it was crazy meeting him. Yeah. And he's on fire. He's really active in the political space and organizing. He's a great guy. So
that's awesome. Well, I think what's really cool with that too is as you cathartically healed through your book and Khalif's story, the tragic story of Khalif's life, getting to meet his brother, the survivor, right? Having watched his brother go through it and having time to process and helping you process, I think is really cool. Yeah. And so let's talk about your journey with Remedy Network. So what is Remedy Networks? And you talked about a few organizations you partnered with. So tell me a little about, you talk about making impact. You're a community organizer, a builder, and you talked a lot about legacy to start us off. And that's what you did with Remedy Network. So tell me a little about what that is as a platform and what you're currently doing with Remedy today.
Yeah, definitely. So Remedy, we are a social impact nonprofit, and we curate spaces of safe dialogue for young professionals centered around mental health, prison reform, and social justice. So we create conversation around those, advocate for that, to go ahead and resource those people. So it's not just, I call it rah-rah. I feel like a lot of people, and they get really excited about an issue or a cause, but that doesn't really lead to any type of change in the culture, any type of, bills being passed, or how is the society changing as a direct correlation to us being excited about something. Just in like social media culture, I just felt that disconnect. Like we post about it and all of this, and that does bring about, awareness. Yeah. And, I don't want to down on that, but can we actually change law? Can we actually, speak to those in authority, those in power that can shift and change not just the dialogue and the perception of these things that we are excited about, but can actually put some things into practice. So that's how Remedy came about.
I love it. And you said that you're still active in the community today. I know that you were out in California. You got to meet some people. You were upstate meeting with, was it the prison reform recently? Yeah,
the New York State Jail Administrators Program with some people from the Bronx and also Westchester County. Some of the leaders up there just with prison reform work.
Talking about it. That's awesome. Yeah, I got to, I did some contract work for an organization called Lead 360. Oh, wow. And it is an organization that is empowering Black leaders to make impact. And it's for Black executives at large corporates, and talking about diversity in the workplace and how they can, create impact in the program. And I remember, we hosted this big event, and it was really cool. And this is very powerful speakers, and conversation, especially in today's day and age, is being an ally is one thing. And there's a lot of rah-rah, I'm an ally, but we need less allies and more advocates, more people to do. And there's a place and space for both, right? Yeah. And some people are meant to be allies and some people are meant to be advocates. But where do we help empower, strengthen, and develop those to have a voice, whether wherever you stand in things, but being more of an advocate for what you believe in and having a safe space, because we know the internet as it is today is just a very terrible place. We're looking at Facebook, all these things that happen. Yeah. And so having a safe space is an amazing thing to work through. So, you've been building Remedy Networks. You've been out here in New York for 6-7 years now, right?
Yeah. I can't
longer
believe
than that?
6
years now.
Believe it's been that long.
You also, in the middle of all this, and how Jay Caleb and I met is Starta Ventures. So Starta Ventures is an venture-backed accelerator program here in New York that helps entrepreneurs all around the world and in the U.S. go through an accelerator program and upscale their business. One of the companies that came through was Alcove Systems.
Yeah.
And Alcove was Jay Caleb's millennial business and travel in New York City and big cities. When you're carrying all your bags around, you want to put them down for a time or two. Unfortunately, you launched that right as a pandemic started raising, which has been hard. So tell me a little about, what was that experience like? I know that you still have Alcove Systems. It's something kind of on the back burner. Yeah. What was that experience like starting something and having to push through that and having to put that on the back burner as an entrepreneur? Because the other thing is, we love entrepreneurship and it's all rah-rah and great. We just talked about we don't need more rah-rah. Right. This sucked and it was tough. It was a tough blow. So tell me a little about how you've gone through and what you learned from that and just that experience of Alcove Systems and what it's taught you.
Yeah, wow, I have so much to say on it. This is why I love talking to Rob. And shout out to everyone listening to this because, just a great friend, great advocate, always pouring into people. I don't know. I just had to say that. Starting a business during the pandemic was crazy. And I had no idea what I was doing at the time. But I knew that there was a problem, and the problem was on-demand short-term luggage storage in big cities. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wanted to somehow change that narrative. It's in me as to be a problem solver. Yeah. And so I don't always know how it's going to end up or what's going to happen, but I want to at least try. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people don't even try. They psych themselves out before they try. Yeah. But anyway, with Alcove, I learned so much. And I think, I don't know, I would argue to say sometimes we win more through our losses. And I'm not saying Alcove is a loss, but I'm saying sometimes we can learn more through opposition and when things don't work, because it forces us to go back to the drawing board and to strategize and see how we can get that win. So Alcove was almost like my pandemic project. We're all stuck at home. And so instead of just binge watching Netflix or just, I don't know, we all went through a moment. I don't know where you were at.
Playing Call of Duty a lot.
Yeah, Call of Duty, that app, even on Netflix or something, you can invite your friends to watch it or something. After you do all that, it's okay, I'm wasting brain cells. What can I do? So that was a project that I could work on. And I remember all the investors were also always telling me how's this going to work? It's a pandemic. Nobody's flying, 0 people in TSA. This was pre-mask, pre-vaccine. Mm-hmm. And I'm people are going to start flying again. People are waiting. So we can't just wait for people to, bamboozle through TSA and then be okay, well, now we need to pay attention to this problem. So it taught me a lot of things. It taught me about investor relations, reaching out to investors. Anything from pitch deck to, looking at the different ways of capital, whether that's through a convertible note, whether it's through debt, whether it's through equity, teaching me so much about startups. And as an entrepreneur, I think the main thing that I learned from that, and I know I'm going on and on about this, but your first startup won't necessarily be your last. And so you can take what you learned. And entrepreneurs, we're always going to be entrepreneurs until we die. So it's it's just embedded in me to want to do that. So,
you talked about we learn through opposition. Change happens through opposition. Every revolution, I think about industrial revolution, happened after the Great Depression, right? Commerce and different industries kicked up because of and after wars, right? Yeah. Opposition creates opportunity. And we have to realize that through this lens of entrepreneurship, there's no one shining moment. We see these big stories that happen in the news. What you don't see is the hours of grinding out. Right? I had Alex Batdor from Get Shit Done on here, and she was talking about don't do entrepreneurship for the gram. Do it because you want to make an impact. Right?
Wow.
And there's so many people that are content creators and entrepreneurs because they want to be seen as like a business owner and these cool things. And then you get into it and you're like, shit, this shit is fucking hard.
It's hard.
But that's where you learn, and that's where you create, and that's where things happen. So I love the fact that Alcove Systems was a pet project and something that you could still develop and build and something on the back burner.
Yeah.
But it's a lesson. It's something that it's made you stronger and going to be helpful in the way Remedy Network grows, the way Alcove System may grow in the future, may change and evolve. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. That's the whole point of, coming back to the bare necessities. The reason why I named it this, the reason why I wanted to do these conversations is to talk about what happened in our lives to make us feel like this, that we wanted to do this. Everyone can be an entrepreneur, but not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So what are the things that drove us to that? And that's what interests me more than anything is that mindset, right? Because we can be entrepreneurial minded and not go out and be entrepreneurs. We actually have a term for that called intrapreneurs. I did a great episode with Greg Larkin. Intrapreneurs are those that are entrepreneurial in their ecosystems or organizations to make change and impact and create things at bigger companies, right?
Yeah.
So whoever is out there listening, as you hear about it, there's different things about being an entrepreneur and ways to take that mindset of an entrepreneur and put it in your daily life, whether that's you building your own business or you being a part of another organization.
Right.
So I love this thing that, we talk about it as, something that didn't succeed, but we learn more from it. I think we're all so, because of the age of the internet and social influencer culture, telling us that we have to be perfect, we don't do things unless it's perfect.
Right.
Guess what? Nothing's ever going to be fucking perfect.
Ever.
And
you miss out.
How can things be perfect if you don't fail first?
Wow.
Right? Like, how do we know what perfection is if we've never felt loss, right? Like, how do we know joy, right? We have immense joy in our lives and happiness.
Yeah.
But happiness and joy doesn't feel so good if it wasn't for feeling losses.
Yeah.
Right?
So
and feeling defeat.
Yeah.
And, I've talked about this before, and Craig Larkin made a big point is that you should look at the survivors. Those that slogged through and survived and came out the other side, those are the ones that innovate. Those are the ones that are problem solvers, right?
Wow.
Because if you have never really gone through a major event, a major problem, it's really hard for you to come out, and if you ever survive something, to really thrive in something. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of stop on my soapbox there.
No, that's so good. So good.
But that's why we do what we do, right? That's why this is important. That's why this messaging is important. So, let's talk about where you're at today. So what are you currently doing now with your different business units, and how has that affected into, what we do as we head into next year?
Yeah, so I am still doing work with Remedy Network, and that's it's interesting. Alcove went to the back burner and Remedy pushed forward. It blazed through.
Yeah.
So I'm still leading projects with Remedy Network, and I'm also the director of business operations for a company called Nucleos. And they are an education technology company for second chance learners. And so that takes up the majority of my time now. I mean, I also do other speaking engagements, and I'm really passionate about, investing into the next generation and that. But so Remedy, we're looking to actually do more events in New York, but we're also looking to expand to in other areas. I'll say that right now. So.
Yeah. So there's plans coming.
Yeah, there's plans coming.
But it's awesome that Nucleos, the opportunity, because that company is one that also has a very big impacted mission to it, and you're probably learning a lot from that goes into Remedy, and I'm sure there might be some opportunity to kind of blend the two lives and worlds together.
Definitely.
So that's exciting. And to those out there listening, right, entrepreneurship is not a linear path, and sometimes you gotta go different ways and take different steps. And a lot of people don't know this about me in my career, is I recently joined as the chief marketing officer for a B2B SaaS employer paid benefit company called Village. And it was something I wasn't expecting to do. I still driving Rise Up, and we have a lot of things planned for 2022. In fact, my book is finally done.
Yes. Is it done?
Yep, I approved the manuscript as of the recording on November 4th. This episode will drop here in a couple weeks. But the manuscript's approved, cover's done. We have the IBSN and copyright, everything. pre-sale launches about the time this actually goes out. The pre-sale have launched, and the book comes out January 23rd. So, I took on this role because I really believed in the founder and wanted to be a part of building something through the growth of Village. And it doesn't stop. I still have Happy Group, still running that with my business partner Phil and our team down in Mexico with new partners with JC and Philip. And entrepreneurship doesn't be linear, and it doesn't change from what we're building at Rise Up Coaching and what I have planned for 2022 with Rise Up Coaching. But sometimes you just see where you can make an impact, and you're like, you know what? This is an opportunity. This is an experience that I just have to do. And it's going to level me up and teach me so much more so that I can continue to build the best things for Bear Nation, for the podcast, for the book, for my audience, for my business. And that's what I think is really cool about entrepreneurship is it gives you so many opportunities to chase after. And that's why I tell this all the time to people, chase opportunity and not money. Right? When you chase opportunity, good things happen. Money will always come. So I love that your journey hasn't been linear, and there's some big things happening in 2022 with where Remedy Network's going to go and some of the work you're doing with Nucleus. So that's really a cool thing to do. And I'm, for those out there, follow along. I'm trying to get my man here to be more active on social, building his personal brand. For those that don't know my book, The Social Soul, Mastering Your Personal and Professional Brand with Authenticity and Intentionality, comes out in January. It's all about is how to be an engager and create your value-added network, less about being a content creator. So stay tuned for that, Bear Nation. So as we kind of wrap up, I know we're at the Starta Ventures space. There's an event about to go off with the French American Chamber of Commerce, the soiree, that I'm going to attend. So we're wrapping up, wanted to kind of get some lasting thoughts. We talk about Remedy Network, we talk about all these things. We started off the conversation about what entrepreneurship meant to you and leaving that legacy. Yeah. Right? And as you write the story of J. Caleb and we head into 2022, instead of thinking in the big macro of what your legacy would be, what do you want your legacy to be at the end of this year? Like, what do you want to be able to say? Like, my legacy for 2021 in the chapter of J. Caleb as I turn the page to 2022, what is that legacy just for you personally?
That is such a great question. For me personally, my legacy for this year, I think it would be that sometimes you just have to survive into your calling. And the reason why I say that is because we're taught to fight and, which is good. I mean, these are all good moments to fight, blaze through. But I'll never forget a friend of mine who said this to me, and now it's coming back up to light because I'm going through it now. And he was like, after you've done all that, you fought, you've looked for the job, this opportunity came, it left, whatever, and you feel like you're still not in that sweet spot. Sometimes the last thing to do is just wait and literally just survive into it. Yeah. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be this year is we all went through a global pandemic and we all went through change and we've all had to learn how to pivot and, up and down. But at the end of the day, we're here, we survived it, and we just got to keep going. Yeah. So I love that. You survived. Your legacy for 2021 is I survived. Yeah. You survived, a business opportunity that didn't quite go where you wanted to, but something that you had built and was operating that you weren't focusing on came back to life. Yeah. And that opens up a chapter for a comeback next year. I think that's a great lasting legacy for 2021. So as I close out with every episode, there's a few questions I always like to ask. So the first question, and I'm excited for this one, is, what is your superpower? What do you think your superpower is? I think my superpower is conversation and connecting with people. Yeah. So. Creating conversation, being that being that builder. I think that's such a cool thing. That's hard to do. It's hard to connect, coming from Detroit, living down in Tulsa, now in New York, you've been in different parts of the States, you've been in different experiences, you've worked in large organizations, small organizations. Your ability to just connect and exist and create is something that's hard for a lot of people. So I think that's a great superpower. Thank you. So if you were talking to a group of entrepreneurs that are saying, hey, J. Caleb, I want to be an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them? Ooh, meet as many people as you can. And probably another one is don't be afraid to learn while you're doing. Having side hustles, doing all that, just just meet people. You never know. So
I love that. I mean, that kind of goes back to your superpower, right? Meet as many people as you can. You never know who can help you. And that's, one of the things I talk about in the book is building a value-added network. That was one of the things that I feel like I've figured out how to master and leverage the people in our lives. So I think that's a great thing. And most entrepreneurs, they get stuck in their own world. They think, I'm right. And they forget to listen to their customer. They forget to talk about it. They forget to introduce themselves to people and share that vision. And I do think the other thing was important, right? Because when you start sharing your vision, there's going to be a lot of people that don't believe it. And they're either going to say it's great because they don't have the heart to tell you it's not, or they think you're crazy and like, why are you not doing the traditional path? And that you want to meet as many people as you can and talk about it, but also take everything with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And find those in your life that will advocate for you and give you the hard truths.
I wish I had your book like 6 years ago when I was in Tulsa.
Well, then maybe you would have never written your book. So I think,
That's true.
your journey to where you're at today is just setting you up for future success.
Wow,
What's a book, a resource, a show, something that you think people should be tuning into if they're looking to get into entrepreneurship or continue their journey in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I know this book gets some flack, but The Lean Startup by Eric Rice. Yeah, it's such a good book. I mean, just the MVP model and everything. It helped me so much from like switching from like a huge business plan to, it was just so strategic. So Lean Startup.
I love it. I mean, I'm a big proponent of the Lean Startup. I love it. And the fact that I don't think you need 50-page. We were taught how to write a 50-page business plan.
Right.
I don't want to look at through 50 pages.
Yeah.
When I talk with businesses and entrepreneurs, I'm like, tell me what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. Yeah. I don't care the market. I mean, obviously you have to care about the market size, but I really don't care about your TAM, SAM, and SOM. Like, cool. You're going to come and take 2% of the market in 5 years and make $5 million. I doubt it.
Right.
But prove me wrong. How the fuck are you going to get there? Show me a real short burst of like, hey, we're going to start at this and test this and then build this.
Exactly.
And go from there. Because that is what people miss. And 50-page business plans don't allow you for that flexibility. It's like, show me how, pivot, iterate, take feedback, pivot, iterate. So definitely. I love that book.
So good.
What do you think, as we close out, what's your lasting message to all those out there as they're going through it right now?
Man, my lasting message would be never give up. Just never give up. Yeah.
And we just talked about be a survivor. That's your chapter for the year, right?
That's it.
Things can happen. Life is hard.
Yeah.
If it was easy, we'd all be in a very different place. So never give up and lean on people. Don't be afraid. This is what I love about Remedy Networks, right? Creating a safe space. A lot of us are afraid to ask for help, especially out of the entrepreneurial community. Our biggest, I was listening to David Meltzer was talking about this the other day of entrepreneurs and leaders think they need to be right all the time or they need to be the person to answer the question.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that. I was like, it's so true.
And you have to be okay with asking for help. You don't have to be everything to everyone.
Yes.
As a leader, vulnerability and showing that you rely on your team and others in your life to help you is actually going to take you bigger places.
So true.
So where can my followers find you? If they want to connect with you and chat more or learn more about what you're building, how do they find you? Let them know.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at jcaleb, Jcaleb as in boy. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can go to remedynetwork.com as well. My contact information is there. But yeah, love to connect.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to drop the Instagram handle, the LinkedIn, the website, and also a link to your book. It's on Amazon, right?
The book is on Amazon.
Okay, so I'll drop an Amazon book link in there so you can follow along with my guest. My man, it was fun that we even got to do this in person.
I know.
Like this is my first in-person recording. Hopefully it comes across clean for all Bear Nation. Shout out to y'all for always tuning in. And, if there's other topics you want to explore, people in your network that I should be connecting with, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me know. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Bear Nation. Jay Khalid, thank you so much, my guy.
Such a pleasure. Bear Nation, let's go.
Bear Nation, once again, thank you for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, take care.